In this video you will learn everything that you need to know about WebSockets and Sochet.io for your everyday use. And the first question is, of course, what are WebSockets? Why do we need WebSockets when we can do simple normal API requests? And actually, when we are making just REST API requests, so from client to the backend, normally this is a single request, which means our client sends some information to our backend, and our backend can respond with some information. But this is it. This is the end of communication between client and backend. Actually, if you will open DevTools on any website and reload the page, you can see in the network a lot of requests. And actually, this is a normal API request. So client sent the request, for example, for this URL, and backend responded with some information. The main point is that request is completely stateless, because after this request, our backend doesn't know anything regarding our client. This request is already done, which means if the same client sends the next request, then it is completely new request, and only the information which is provided inside request can show backend what customer it is. With WebSockets it is completely different. When we have a client and backend communication, it means that we have an open connection between our client and backend, which means we are not closing our request after backend responded with data. This request is still hanging there, and until this request will be closed, we can transfer some data from the client to backend or back. And this is extremely efficient if you need to transfer lots of data. For example, we are talking about chat system or some real-time communication, or maybe games where you need to transfer lots of data between your client and your backend. And the most popular solution to work with WebSockets inside JavaScript world is the Sochet.io library. This is a library for frontend and backend, which means we can build everything with it. And actually here I already prepared a small project for us. First of all, here I have a package JSON where I installed just two packages. First of all, Express, because it is easier to build a project when you have some routing, and this is our WebSockets library. And I have here a script start, this is just Node server, and here is my server. As you can see, it is completely empty. But I already prepared here our index.html, and actually I have quite a lot of stuff here. First of all, inside body I have some markup, and as you can see in browser, this is how our markup is looking like. So we have here 5 inputs and 3 buttons, and this is it. And after this I have a script where inside I first of all got all these elements, and then I attached listeners for our buttons, so our code is working. As you can see, I can type a name here and hit login, and then we're getting here nice console log, and the same with sender and message, we're getting also console log, and here is our room and we can join the room. So now it's time to create our server, and actually there are different ways to create our server with Sochet.io, and by default it is really easy. You simply create a server of Sochet.io and you are using it, but it is not a production solution. Normally for production use we want to mix, for example, Express with Sochet.io because it is nice to have routing, serving static files, but also Sochet.io. This is why I will show you more complicated variant, but it is suitable for production. For this we must jump inside our server.js, and first of all we must create our application. This is why first of all we must import here our Express package, and here I am requiring Express. Now let's create our application, so this is just an instance from Express function. But after this we must create an HTTP server because we want to provide HTTP server inside Sochet.io. This is why here I am creating HTTP, and I need to require here HTTP package. And we don't need to install it because it is there in Node by default. Our next step is to create HTTP server, so here we can write server and we just use http.createServer, and we must provide inside our app, which is an instance of Express. The next step is to create here our Sochet.io. This is why here we are getting a destructuring, and here we have a class server, and we must require here our socket.io. So we are getting here server, and now we must call it. So here we are creating IO, and we are calling new server, and we are providing inside our server. And as you can see, it looks really complicated because here actually we want to create IO, but we also have access to our server and our Express application. But actually this is a production use where we mix all this stuff together. Now what we can do, we can write server, listen, and we can start our web server. This is why here let's write 3000 port, and here is our callback, for example, console log started. In this case we are talking regarding server. What we can do also here, we can serve our HTML file. And for this we can use our app. So we can write app-get/, and here we want to get request and response, and we want to serve our file. This is why here res send file, and here inside we must provide a path. So here we want to use current directory name. This is why 2_dir name plus, and here we will have /index.html. And the last thing that we need to write here is our subscription to IO. So here I am writing IO.on, and here we are providing string connection. And as a second parameter, we have a callback with socket. So what I want to write here inside, just console log connected. So as you can see, we did three different things. First of all, we use here app to communicate with Express. Here we used IO to use socket IO, and here we use our server to start a web server. But this is just a backend part. Now we must do it on client side. And actually for this inside index.html, I have this line with script /socket IO JS. And actually we are getting this file directly from socket IO. So this line will create an IO property inside window. And now at the beginning of our script, just on the first line, we want to call it. This is why here we can create just const socket equals IO. In this case, we are writing a window property socket, and we are just calling here IO to initialize it. Now let's start our web server. I will simply write yarn start inside console. We don't have any errors and it is started. Now we can jump to our localhost 3000 and reload the page. And actually when I am looking now here inside console, you can see the console log connected, which actually means our connection for socket IO between client and server is already working. And for this we need two things. First of all, we need here on frontend socket IO line, because without this line, socket IO doesn't know what to do. And the next thing that we need inside our server.js, we must write IO on connection. In this case, when our client was connected, we are getting this console log connected, and we can do something with it. And now let's have a look on our socket. Actually here inside window we have socket property. And actually this is our socket from socket IO, and here we have lots of useful information. And first, the most important part is this ID, because this is our unique identifier for this socket inside socket IO. And the most important part to remember here is that this socket ID is just unique for this tab, which actually means if I will duplicate here a tab and open console, you can see here inside socket that we have another ID. As you can see here, ID is JCI, and here it was QTR, which means actually it's not unique in browser or in your operational system, it is unique just for this window. And also it is extremely important to call this single liner only once. If you will call it twice, this means you have two socket connections and everything is wrong, because your connected client is not unique, and then your backend doesn't really know what client connected to it. So now let's start to do some events. For example, we have here client, and I am on the first tab, and let's say that we want to log in our system. And actually it would be nice to have a name for our user. So we can type here our name and hit login, and then we are getting here console log, log it as, and here is the name. So to send a message from our client to the backend, we are using socket emit. So socket is just a property inside window, and we can say here emit, and as a first parameter we must provide a unique name of our event. In this case we are doing login, which means login is fine. And as a second parameter we might provide some data, but it is not mandatory. But for our case it is really nice because we must provide here a name. So here we have name input.value. In this case, our client will send this event with this name to our backend. But our backend doesn't know how to react to this specific event. This is why we must jump inside our server.js, and here inside onConnection we have a socket, and we can write here socket on to subscribe to this specific event. So we must provide here this unique string with our event name, and in our case it will be login, and we are getting here as a second parameter our argument with data, so it will be name. Now inside let's write console log, login, and here is our name. Let's save this and restart our web server. So I'm starting it again. As you can see, we are getting started and connected twice because I have two open tabs and it is completely fine. Now I will reload this page, type something here and hit login. And as you can see, here is our console log, and inside our backend log, we can see login and our name, which actually means we successfully sent from the client an event to our backend. And to do this, we first of all must write socket emit and then some unique name, and after this inside server, we must create socket on and then the name of this event, and we can get access to these parameters. And obviously, most importantly, we are writing this code inside IO on connection, because only in this case we are getting access to our socket. And actually what we can do here now, we can console log also socket.id. And actually it will be exactly the ID that you can see here inside socket.id. Because this is our unique ID of connected client, and we are providing this unique ID to our backend, and in this case we know what client connected to us. This is why here let's restart again our web server, and let's hit here login again. And as you can see in console log, we are getting now our name, and also we are getting our unique socket ID. In this case we know what client sent us this message. So now we successfully notified our backend about our new login. But actually our client can't send a message directly to all other clients, and this is important to remember. This is why when we want to send a message, for example, that user was logged in to all other clients, it means that first of all our client must hit a backend, and then backend must notify all our clients. In this case, as you can see here, we have socket on login, and here we can write some information to notify all clients about our new login. And for this we can actually write io.emit, so exactly like we did it on client, and here for example we can write new login. And after this we can provide some data, for example a name of our new user. So we emitted some new information inside our backend, but our client didn't react for this information. This is why let's open on the right our index.html, and here somewhere we must subscribe to our event. So actually, for example, after socket IO, we can subscribe here to a new event. And for this we can write socket.on, and in this case we are reacting to our new event. And actually, as you can see, this code is exactly the same like we are writing on the backend. So everywhere we have socket emit and IO on. In our case here we want to subscribe to our event new login. And here we have our callback where we are getting a name. And let's console log here just a name so we can check what we are getting. So here I am writing new login, comma, name, and saving this file. Now we must restart our web server. So I am restarting it again and reloading my web page. Now we want to log in this user, but actually here I also have a second tab, which is extremely important. Now we want to log in the first page. I'm hitting here login, and as you can see we directly got a message new login QQQ, and this is our new name. And actually in our second tab we also get a message new login QQQ, which actually means this single liner here inside backend that you can see on the right, IO emit new login, emits for all our clients this specific event. And now all our clients can subscribe to this event with socket on new login, and then they can do something. But actually here is the problem. As you can see here we are logged in as a first user QQQ, and we are getting back this event. And actually it doesn't make sense for us, because actually this specific client knows that we are logged in. We don't need to notify this specific client. We just want to send our messages to all other clients. This is why typically you don't want to use this IO emit that we wrote here on the right. But we want to write instead here socket.broadcast.emit. And actually the difference is that we are not using here IO instance, but we are using this specific socket. And word broadcast here means that we are sending our message to all other clients. In this case we will send this emit to all clients except of this socket. And actually inside socket we have socket ID, so our backend knows to what client he doesn't need to send this message. Let's restart our web server and start again. So here on our first page I am logged in as www, I am hitting login, and here we just see login as www. We don't get any subscription here, but actually in the second tab we are getting new login www. And actually always in your application you want to use this socket broadcast emit, because typically you don't want to send the message to all your users, but you want to exclude your client, because actually client always knows the information that it sends to your backend. So now we know how to emit event on the client and on the backend, and how to broadcast events to all our clients. And now we need to talk about private messaging. And actually it is completely possible that we need a logic where we're sending some event privately. What does it mean? We can't really use broadcast here because all our users will receive this event. And actually typically, for example, in the chat or anywhere, you want to send some private information from one client to other client. And of course you can't do it directly. You can just communicate through your backend. This is why it is secure. This is why here I have two inputs, first of all send to and secondly message. The main idea is that we must implement here private sending of information. So what we want to write here is the ID of the socket where we want to send a message, and here is our message. And actually here we could also use the name, which might be unique, and then transform it to the socket ID. But for the simplicity I will simply use here socket ID, because this is our unique information. What we must do here, we want to emit on the client a new message. As you can see here, I have a bunch of listeners and we're interested in this part. So here we have our send button, and here we're sending to our recipient's input and message input. And actually here we can just write socket emit just like we did previously. And here we can name this event send to, and as an object we can provide here all data that we need. First of all, it is our recipient, and it will be our recipient input dot value, and secondly it's our message, and our message will be message input dot value. So after we hit a button, our client will pass this information through socket emit to our backend. The next step is that our backend must subscribe to this event. This is why here on the right I will open our server.js, and here our socket on login. We just write here new socket on, and here will be our event send to, and here we are getting our parameters. So actually we can just say here params or message object maybe, and inside we want to do something. First of all, let's test that it is working at all. So we want to write here console log send to, and here we want to check our params that we are getting. Now we must restart our web server and send our message. So here I am on first tab, and here I want to send to doesn't matter, and message also doesn't matter. And actually here inside console log we can see send to recipient and message, which means we successfully emitted our event from the client and we got this event on our backend. What we want to do now, we must send this message to its recipient, which actually means here what we can do is write socket.to, and to means that this is a private message, and inside we must provide a socket ID. In our case, we will get a socket ID inside our params dot, and here will be our recipient. So we're storing our recipient as a socket ID. After this, we are writing it exactly like previously, .emit, and here we must create some message. For example, we can name it private message, and here we can pass any information that we want. For example, we can also pass here an object, and inside we can pass two things. First of all, we must pass our message, and it will be our params.message, and secondly, we want to know who sent this message. This is why here we can just write sender, and here will be socket.id. And actually normally maybe you want to have here not just ID but the name of the user. For our case it is enough to understand who sent us a message. Now we must subscribe to this message on the client. This is why here on the left we can just write socket on, and here will be our new event private message. And here we are getting our params, and we can just console log them here. So let's write here our new private message, and here we have our params that we need to see. Now let's restart our web server and check if it's working. So to make it working, we must know the ID of our recipient. This is why here on the second tab I will write socket.id. As you can see, this is just a string. I will copy it here, and I'm jumping to our first tab, and here inside send to I'm pasting this socket ID. Now here is our message, for example foo, we're hitting here send. As you can see, we're getting a message send to because this is our console log in the client. Now here you can see send to recipient, here is our information inside backend, and now here on the second tab you can see our private message, and here is our message foo and sender our ID. And actually this message was completely private. Why is that? Because actually our clients didn't communicate between each other. First client sent a message to our backend, and our backend generated a message for our second client. This is why it is extremely safe. One more thing that I want to show you is called rooms. Actually, rooms is a super broad concept that allows us to send messages to a list of different users. For example, your chat application is divided in different chats, which actually means you want to send your message just to the user inside specific chat. For this we have rooms. What is a room? It's just some unique string that we can join and then send their messages. This is why here we have this functionality. Here we can simply make enter room name and then hit join. In this case we will join a room. And after this we can send messages to this specific room. First of all, let's implement joining. And actually it is important to remember that rooms is just a server-side concept, which means you can't get a list of the rooms inside client, and this is completely normal. So first of all, our client must notify our backend that we want to join a room. This is why here is our code with joining a room, and as you can see this is just a console log. So here I am typing some room name, I am hitting join room, and we are getting this join console log. What we can do now here, we can write socket.emit, for example, join room. And here we can provide the name of the room that we want to join. This is why here will be room input.value. Now we need to subscribe to this join room inside our server. This is why here we just write new socket on, and here we want to react on our message join room, and we are getting here our room name. What we want to do inside, we want just to write console log to check if it's working. So here is join, and here is our room name. Now I must restart my web server to check if it's working. So I'm reloading a page here, type the name of the room, and hit join room. As you can see, we have here our new event join, and here is the name of the room. So our server successfully got our message from the client. And now we must join this client to our room. To join client to the room, we can simply write here socket.join and here the name of the room. In our case, it will be room name. And actually the name of the room is just some custom string that we can reuse later. And after this, you might want to notify your client that he successfully joined the room. This is why here we can write io.to, and here we're just providing our socket.id. Which actually means we can use to not only on socket2 but also on io2 to send private messages. And here I can simply write .emit, and here will be my new emit, for example, joined room. Now we must subscribe to this emit on our client. This is why here on the left we can write new socket on. So here we have socket on, and here will be joined room. And actually we don't get any parameters here, and we just want to write here a console log that we successfully joined the room. Now let's reload our web server and check if it's working. So I'm typing here a name of the room, I'm hitting join room, and we're getting a message successfully joined. And as you can see here on the right, our second user didn't receive any information, because actually it was completely private. Our backend sent with this line a new emit to our client, and only our single client who joined this room got this information. Now let's say we want to send a new message to all people inside this room about our new user. And for this we can write io2, so exactly the same like previously, but instead of our private ID, we will write here a room name. And actually this is just our unique string, and we can emit here messages. In this case, all our clients who join this specific room will get this information. So let's write here, for example, event public message, and here let's provide our message. For example, new user, and here we must provide the name of our new user, but we don't have a name, so let's use here socket.id. So this line will send this message to all clients inside this room. But now here on the left we must subscribe to this event. This is why here I copied joined room, and let's name it public-message, and here we're getting our message. Now here inside our console log, let's just write our message. Now we must reload our web server and check if it's working. So I will reload our page, and here just type foo. We're hitting join room, and as you can see we're getting several things. First of all, join foo, this is just our console login client. Here is successfully joined. This is our emit that we did here. This is our private message to this client. But now all users inside this room got this message, new user, and here is the socket ID of this user. Which actually means with this single liner you can send this message to all users inside your room. Now let's test it with two users. Actually, our first user is already inside this room. Now here I have a second tab, and here I'm typing our room foo. I'm hitting join room, and as you can see here, new user, and we're getting socket ID. So exactly the same information. But when we're jumping to our first tab, as you can see here, we also got a message new user and here socket ID, which actually means it is working correctly and we're notifying all our users. So this was everything that you need to know regarding Socket.io to use it in your next project. And actually, if you want to see how to use Socket.io in the real project that we're building together, make sure to check this video also, because we're building there a chat application.